Captain Lee Dae-ho stood in the command center of the Terran Defense Station, watching the stars through the massive viewport. The coffee in his hand had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. Something was wrong in the galaxy, and he could feel it in his bones. The first distress signal had come from the mining colony on Kepler 7, then another from the research station near Proxima Centauri. Each message was the same. People were disappearing. Not killed, not kidnapped. They were just gone, leaving behind empty clothes in a strange darkness that seemed to eat light itself. "Captain, we have another transmission coming in," called out Communications Officer Lee Min-ho from his station. His voice was tight with worry. "It's from the Outer Rim colonies." Dae-ho walked over to the communication console. The screen flickered to life, showing a woman with wild eyes and dirt-stained clothes. She was breathing hard, looking over her shoulder every few seconds. "This is Colony Administrator Kim the Jin from Titan Base," she whispered into the camera. "If anyone receives this message, stay away from the Outer Rim. Something is hunting us. Something old and terrible speaks in our minds, telling us we cannot hide forever. It knows our names. It knows our fears. We have lost 37 people in the last 2 days. They just walk into the darkness and never come back." The transmission cut to static. Dae-ho stared at the empty screen, his mind racing. 3 colonies in different sectors, all reporting the same thing. This was not a coincidence. "Get me Dr. Park So-young," he ordered. "Tell her to bring everything she has on ancient threats and old legends, and contact the rest of my team. We leave in 2 hours." An hour later, Dr. Park So-young arrived at the briefing room carrying a stack of old books and data tablets. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. Specialty was studying dead civilizations, but lately she had been researching things that were supposed to stay dead. "Captain," she said, setting down her materials on the table, "I think I know what we are dealing with. The disappearances, the darkness, the way people just walk away. It matches something I found in the ancient texts." Lieutenant Kim Taemin entered the room, followed by Sergeant Choi Nari and Engineer Han Ji-woo. They were Dae-ho's core team, the people he trusted most in the galaxy. They had fought pirates, alien raiders, and rogues together, but this felt different. "What do you have, Doctor?" Dae-ho asked. As everyone took their seats, So-young opened one of her old books. The pages were yellow with age, covered in symbols that seemed to shift in the light. "This is from the archives of the architects. They were a civilization that existed over 50,000 years ago. They built cities that spanned entire star systems and had technology we can barely understand." She pointed to a drawing on the page. It showed a massive shadow with eyes like dying stars, reaching out to grab small figures that looked like people. They called it the Void Keeper. According to their records, it was a guardian that went mad. It was supposed to protect life, but instead it began consuming it. Taemin leaned forward. "Consuming how?" "It feeds on consciousness," So-young explained. "Not just the body or the mind, but the very essence of what makes someone alive. The architects tried to fight it, but they could not destroy it, so they imprisoned it in a dimensional prison." Nari checked her weapons, a habit she had when she was nervous. "If it was imprisoned, how is it free now? That's what worries me." So-young said, "The prison was supposed to last forever, but the texts mentioned something about a chosen vessel, someone with a specific genetic marker that the Void Keeper needs to break free completely." Dae-ho felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of genetic marker?" So-young pulled out a data tablet and showed them a complex genetic sequence. "Pattern. It appears in about 1 in 10 million humans. The architects believed that someone with this marker could either imprison the Void Keeper forever or allow it to enter our reality permanently." Ji-woo studied the genetic code on the tablet. "Have you run this against our crew records?" "I was waiting for the captain's permission," So-young replied, but her eyes were already on Dae-ho. "Do it, Dae-ho," said So-young's fingers flew over the tablet. The genetic scanner hummed as it compared the marker against the crew database. After a few minutes, it beeped once. A single match appeared on the screen, Captain Lee Dae-ho. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at the screen, then at their captain. Dae-ho felt the weight of their gazes, but he kept his expression calm. So it's hunting me specifically, he said finally. It would explain why the attacks started recently, So-Young said quietly. Your last medical scan was uploaded to the Galactic database 3 weeks ago. If the Void Keeper has been monitoring for this genetic marker, it would have detected you then. Taman stood up, then we run. We get the captain as far from populated areas as possible. It won't work, So-Young shook her head. The texts say the Void Keeper can sense its chosen vessel from anywhere in the galaxy. Distance doesn't matter. The only way to stop it is to face it. Arish slammed her hand on the table. Then we fight it. We have weapons, ships, an entire defense force. Our weapons won't work against something that exists partially outside our reality, So-Young explained. The architects had technology far beyond ours, and they could not defeat it through force. Deho stood up and walked to the viewport. The stars seemed different now, as if they were watching him. Doctor, is there anything in those texts about how to fight this thing? So-Young hesitated. There might be. The architects left behind some kind of weapon, but the texts are unclear. They called it the Nexus Blade. It was supposed to be forged from crystallized starlight and quantum-locked matter. But using it requires the wielder to enter the Void Keeper's prison. Suicide. Mission, Taman said flatly. Maybe So-Young agreed. Or maybe a chance to end this threat forever. Another alarm sounded. Minho's voice came over the intercom. Captain, we're receiving multiple distress signals. The attacks are spreading. Colony ships are going dark across 3 sectors. Deho turned back to his team. We have a choice. We can run and hope the Void Keeper eventually gives up, or we can find this weapon and end this. What do you want to do, Captain? Juwu asked. Deho looked at each of his team members. They were scared, but they were ready to follow him wherever he led them. That was what made humans special, he thought. They faced impossible odds, not because they were fearless, but because they refused to abandon each other. We're going to find that weapon, he said. And we're going to show this ancient monster what happens when it threatens humanity. The team nodded. They'd work to do. The Starship Thunder moved through space like a silver arrow, its engines pushed to maximum speed. Captain Lee Deho stood on the bridge, watching the star map display their route. They had been running for 3 days now, jumping from system to system, but he could feel it getting closer. Captain, we're approaching the Kepler 440b system, reported Lieutenant Kim Taman from the pilot's seat. The planet has some ancient ruins. Dr. Park thinks we might find answers there. Deho nodded but kept his eyes on the scanner. Every few hours, ships would go dark behind them. The Void Keeper was not just following him. It was spreading like a disease through the galaxy, turning everything it touched into hunters.
Ow.
Sir, incoming transmission from the cargo hauler Blue Star, called out Communications Officer Lee Minho. They're requesting immediate assistance. Put them through, Deho ordered. The screen showed the bridge of a merchant vessel. The captain was a middle-aged man with kind eyes, but now those eyes were filled with terror. Behind him, his crew moved like robots, their faces blank and empty. Please help us, the merchant captain whispered. My crew started acting strange. 2 hours ago? They keep saying the same thing over and over. They want me to give them your location. They say the master is coming, and that resistance is useless. One of the blank-faced crew members stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was not his own. It was deep and ancient, like the sound of dying stars. Captain Lee Deho, you cannot run forever. I have waited centuries for a vessel like you. Soon, all of humanity will serve me. The transmission cut to static. Deho felt a chill run through his body. The Void Keeper was not just hunting him. It was turning people into extensions of itself. Jump us out of here now, he ordered. Already on it, Captain, Taman replied. The stars stretched into lines as they entered hyperspace. Dr. Park So-Young entered the bridge carrying more of her ancient books. She looked tired, but determined. Captain, I've been studying the architect texts. The Void Keeper's power grows stronger, the more consciousness it consumes. Every person it takes makes it harder to stop. How many people has it taken so far? Asked Sergeant Choinari. Based on the distress signals, at least 2,000, So-Young replied. But it's not just humans. I'm getting reports of alien species acting strange too. The Zentari trade ships have gone silent. 3 Mokari colony worlds stopped responding. 2 communications. Engineer Han Ji-woo looked up from his console. If it can control different species, that means it's not limited to human biology. It's something much more dangerous. The texts mentioned that the Void Keeper was originally a guardian of the architects, So-young explained. It was supposed to protect all life in the galaxy. But something went wrong. Began to see life as something to be collected rather than protected. They dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 4b. The planet was brown and rocky, with no signs of current life. But as they got closer, they could see the ruins. Massive structures that looked like they had been carved from single pieces of stone covered the surface. Take us down to the largest structure, Daeho ordered. Full scans as we descend. The ruins were incredible. Towers that reached toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float in the air. The architecture was unlike anything humans had ever built. It looked organic, as if the buildings had grown rather than been constructed. Life support is good, Gu reported as they landed. The atmosphere is breathable, but there are some strange energy readings coming from the central structure. The team gathered their equipment and left the ship. The ruins were even more impressive up close. The stone was covered in symbols that seemed to move when you were not looking directly at them. This way, So-young said, consulting her tablet. The main archive should be in the central tower. They walked through empty streets between the massive buildings. Their footsteps echoed in the silence. Daeho could not shake the feeling that they were being watched. Captain Nari called out, "Look at this." She was standing beside a wall covered in carvings. The images showed the story of the Void Keeper. In the first panels, it was a being of light, protecting smaller figures that represented different species. But as the story progressed, the being grew darker, and the smaller figures began to disappear into its shadow. "It's a warning," So-young said, studying the carvings. The architects knew what they had created. They tried to contain it before. It could spread to other galaxies. They entered the central tower. Inside, the walls were covered in more symbols, but these were different. They pulsed with a faint blue light, like a heartbeat. "The archive is down here," So-young said, leading them to a spiral staircase that descended into the ground. The archive was a vast underground chamber filled with crystal formations. Each crystal contained information stored in a way that human technology could barely understand. So-young connected her tablet to one of the larger crystals. "I'm getting something," she said. "It's the complete history of the Void Keeper. The architects did not just imprison it. They created a weapon that could destroy it permanently." "Kind of weapon?" Daeho asked. Images flashed on So-young's tablet. A blade that seemed to be made of concentrated starlight, forged in the heart of a dying star. Warriors carrying it into battle against creatures of shadow. "The Nexus Blade," So-young said. "The weapon can only be used by someone with your genetic marker, and it requires the wielder to enter the Void Keeper's dimensional prison." "A trap," Taemin said grimly. "Or an opportunity," Daeho replied. "Where is this weapon now?" So-young worked with the crystal archive for several more minutes. Finally, she found the answer. "The planet Titan 7. It's in the Forgotten Sector about 6 jumps from here." Suddenly, the crystals around them began to pulse faster. The blue light grew brighter. "Something's wrong," Gu said, checking his scanner. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures approaching the planet." They ran back to the surface. In the sky above, dark shapes were descending through the atmosphere. Ships, but not normal ones. They moved like living things, their hulls covered in the same darkness that had consumed the missing people. "It found us," Daeho said. The possessed ships landed around the ruins. Figures began emerging from them. They looked like humans and aliens from a dozen different species, but their eyes were empty black holes. "Back to the ship," Daeho ordered. Now they ran through the ruins as the possessed beings began to surround them. The creatures moved within human speed, their voices joining together in a chorus that spoke with the Void Keeper's voice. "You cannot run, chosen vessel. Your consciousness will be mine, and through you, I will devour all life in this galaxy." team reached their ship just as the possessed beings closed in. Taman fired up the engines while Nari provided cover fire. The energy blast seemed to slow the creatures down but did not stop them. "We're clear," Taman called out as they lifted off. As they climbed toward space, Deho looked back at the ruins. The possessed beings were standing in perfect formation, watching them leave. They did not try to follow. They did not need to. "It's not just hunting me anymore," Deho said quietly. "It's hurting me, driving me toward something."
"Toward the
"Weapon," Soyoung said. "It wants you to find the Nexus Blade." "Why would it want that?" "Maybe because it's not afraid of the weapon. Maybe because it knows something we don't." Deho stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there was a weapon that could save humanity or doom it, and the Void Keeper was pushing him toward it. "Set course for Titan 7, he ordered. "We're going to find that blade. And if it's a trap," Taman asked, "then we spring it on our terms." The starship Thunder drifted through the empty space of the Forgotten Sector. Captain Lee Deho stood at the viewport, looking at the planet Titan 7 below. The world was covered in ice and snow, with massive storms that never seemed to end. It looked like a dead place, but the sensors told a different story. "I'm reading massive energy signatures beneath the surface," reported engineer Han Jiwoo from his station. "Something big is down there, and it's still active after all these years." Dr. Park So-young was studying her ancient texts again. Had been working non-stop since they left Kepler-4 to be, trying to understand what they would find on this frozen world. The architects called this place the Forge of Last Hope. It was where they created their most powerful weapons. "Any sign of the Void Keeper's forces?" asked Sergeant Choi Nari, checking her weapons for the third time in an hour. Lieutenant Kim Taman scanned the space around them. "Nothing yet, but that doesn't mean we're safe. It's been too quiet since we left the ruins." Deho nodded. The Void Keeper had been pushing them toward this place, and he did not like walking into obvious traps. But they needed that weapon. If they were going to save humanity. "Take us down to the surface," he ordered. "Full environmental suits. This place looks like it could kill us just from the cold." The landing was rough. The storms on Titan 7 were worse than they had expected. Lightning crackled through the air, and the wind howled like a living thing. But their suits held, and the ship's shields protected them from the worst of it. "The energy readings are coming from about 2 kilometers north," Giwoo said, checking his scanner. "There's a structure buried under the ice." They began walking across the frozen wasteland. The ground was covered in ice so thick that their boots barely made a mark. Above them, the sky was filled with swirling clouds that blocked out the sun. "This place feels wrong," Nari said over the com. "Like something terrible happened here." "Something did," Soyoung replied. According to the texts, this was where the architects made their final stand against the Void Keeper. They lost. After an hour of walking, they reached a massive crater. In the ice, at the bottom, they could see the remains of a building that was bigger than anything they had seen before. It was made of the same strange stone as the ruins on Kepler-4 to be, but this structure was different. It looked like it had been built for war. "There's an entrance down there," Taman said, pointing to a dark opening in the side of the building. "But getting down there is going to be tricky." They used climbing gear to descend into the crater. The walls were covered in ice, but underneath they could see more of the architect's symbols. These symbols were different from the ones they had seen before. They seemed angry, desperate. They knew they were losing, So-young said, studying the symbols. "These are warnings. Instructions for whoever came after them." They entered the structure through the dark opening. Inside, the air was warmer, and they could remove their environmental suits. The walls were covered in a soft blue light that came from crystals embedded in the stone. "The power source is still active," Jiwoo said with amazement.
After 50.
1,000 years? Their technology is still working. They followed a long corridor that led deeper into the structure. The walls were covered in more symbols, but these told a story. They showed the architects building weapons, fighting creatures of shadow. And finally, in desperation, creating something that glowed with the light of stars. "The Nexus Blade," Soyoung whispered. "They're showing us how they made it." The corridor ended at a massive chamber. In the center of the room was a pool of liquid that glowed with the same blue light as the crystals. Above the pool, suspended in the air by some unknown force, was a sword. The weapon was beautiful and terrible at the same time. It looked like it had been forged from captured starlight, and the blade seemed to contain the swirling patterns of entire galaxies. Energy danced along its edge, and just looking at it made Daeho's eyes water. "That's it," So-Young said in awe. "The Nexus Blade, the weapon that can destroy the Void Keeper." Around the chamber, they found more crystal archives. So-Young connected her tablet to them and began downloading the information. What she found made her face go pale. "Captain, there's something you need to know about this weapon," she said quietly. "The architects did not just create it to fight the Void Keeper. They created it to replace the Void Keeper." "What do you mean?" Daeho asked. "The Void Keeper was not always evil. It was a guardian created to protect life in the galaxy. But something corrupted it, turned it into a predator. The architects realized they could not simply destroy it without creating a void in the cosmic balance." So-Young showed them the data on her tablet. "The Nexus Blade does not just kill the Void Keeper, it merges with the wielder, turning them into a new guardian, someone who can choose to protect life instead of consuming it." "A sacrifice," Timon said grimly. "More than that," So-Young continued. "The wielder becomes something beyond human. It exists partially outside our reality, able to guard against threats that normal people cannot even see. Oh, but they can never return to their old life." Daeho walked closer to the weapon. He could feel it calling to him, responding to something in his genetic code. "What happens if we don't use it?" "The Void Keeper continues to grow stronger," So-Young replied. "Eventually, it will consume every living thing in the galaxy. Then it will move on to the next galaxy, and the next. It will not stop until all life everywhere is gone. And if we do use it, then you save everyone, but you can never see them again." Nari stepped forward. "Captain, we could find another way. There has to be another option." "The architects were far more advanced than we are," So-Young said sadly. "If they could not find another way, I doubt we can." Daeho reached out toward the weapon, then stopped. "Can the blade be wielded by anyone else with my genetic marker?" So-Young checked the data. "Theoretically, yes, but you're the only person we know who has it, and we need to find others," Daeho said. "We need to search the human databases, find everyone who carries this marker. So maybe together we can find a way to use the weapon without losing ourselves." Suddenly the chamber began to shake. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the blue light flickered. "Something's happening up there," Giwu said, checking his scanner. "I'm reading massive energy signatures. Ships, lots of them." Through the stone walls they could hear a sound like thunder. But it was not thunder. It was the sound of ships landing, hundreds of them. "It found us," Daeho said. The Void Keeper's voice echoed through the chamber, coming from everywhere and nowhere. "You have done well, chosen vessel. You have found the weapon I need you to find. Now you will take it, and you will come to me." "Why does it want me to take the weapon?" Daeho asked. So-Young's eyes widened as she realized the truth. "Because it's not afraid of the blade. It knows something about the weapon that the architects didn't put in their records." The shaking grew stronger. Cracks appeared in the walls, and some of the crystals began to fall from the ceiling. "We need to move," Timon said. "This place is coming down." Daeho looked at the Nexus Blade floating above the pool. He could take it now, become the guardian that the galaxy needed. But something felt wrong. The Void Keeper wanted him to take the weapon. That meant there was a trap he had not seen yet. "We're leaving," he decided. "Without the weapon," Captain Nari protested. "If we leave it here, we might not get another chance. And if I take it now, I might be playing right into the Void Keeper's hands." Daeho replied. "We need more information. We need to understand why it wants me to have this blade." They ran back through the corridors as the structure began to collapse around them. Behind them, the Nexus Blade continued to float above its pool, waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to claim it. Outside, the storm had grown worse. But through the wind and snow, they could see the dark shapes of possessed ships surrounding their vessel. Hundreds of them, all waiting. "They're not attacking," Taman observed. "They're just watching, because they want us to escape." Daeho said they want us to take the weapon and run. The question is, why? As they climbed back toward their ship, fighting against the storm and the collapsing ice, Deho made a decision. He would not play the Void Keeper's game. He would find another way to save humanity. But deep down, he knew that eventually he would have to return to this frozen world. The Nexus Blade was calling to him, and sooner or later, he would have to answer. The only question was whether he would be ready for whatever trap the Void Keeper had prepared for him. Captain Lee Deho stood in the war room of the Thunder, staring at the star map. Red dots covered half the galaxy now, marking systems that had gone dark. The Void Keeper was not waiting anymore. It was consuming everything in its path, growing stronger with each world it took. "Captain, we just lost contact with the Centauri colonies," reported Communications Officer Lee Minho. His voice was tired. "They had been receiving bad news for 3 days straight. That's 12 billion people, sir." Dr. Park So-young looked up from her research. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. But she had not stopped working since they left Titan 7. The rate of consumption is increasing. At this speed, the Void Keeper will reach Earth in less than 2 weeks. "What about the other humans with the genetic marker?" Sergeant Choi Nari. "Did you find any?" So-young shook her head. "I've searched every database we have access to. Captain Deho is the only one. Either the marker is rarer than we thought, or the Void Keeper has already taken anyone else who had it." Engineer Han Juo was working on something at his station. He had been quiet for hours, but now he looked up with excitement. "I think I have an idea. What if we don't run anymore? What if we make the Void Keeper come to us? You want to fight it directly?" Lieutenant Kim Taemin asked. "Our weapons can't hurt it." "Not fight it," Jiwoo said. "Trap it. Force it to take physical form so we can use the Nexus Blade against it." Deho walked over to Giwoo's station. "Explain." "I've been studying the architect technology we found," Jiwoo said, pulling up holographic displays. They had something called dimensional anchor points. These devices could force beings like the Void Keeper to exist in our reality instead of hiding between dimensions. "And you think you can build one?" So-young asked. "Not build, repair. There's one on Pyros 9, a volcanic world about 6 jumps from here. The architects built it as a backup plan, but it was damaged in their final battle with the Void Keeper. Studied the technical data. How long would it take to repair? Maybe 6 hours if we work together. But there's a problem. Once we activate it, the Void Keeper will know exactly where we are. It will come with everything it has." "That's not a problem," Deho said. "That's the point. We lure it to us, force it into physical form, and then I go back to get the Nexus Blade." "Sir," Taemin said carefully, "the weapon is still on Titan 7. If we activate the anchor on Pyros 9, you won't have time to get to the blade before the Void Keeper arrives. Then we'll have to get it first," Deho decided. "We go back to Titan 7, I take the weapon, and then we set the trap." Captain So-young said quietly, "If you take the Nexus Blade, you'll become the new Guardian. You'll save everyone, but you'll never be human again." Deho looked at each of his team members. They had been through so much together. He did not want to leave them, but he had a duty to protect humanity. "Maybe there's another way," Nari said. "Maybe we can find a way to destroy the Void Keeper without transforming you." "The architects tried for centuries," So-young replied. "They were more advanced than we are." "If they couldn't find another way, what makes you think we can?" "Because we're human," Deho said. "And humans don't give up." They set course for Pyros 9. The volcanic world was covered in lava flows and ash clouds, but it was perfect for their plan. The dimensional anchor was built into a massive volcano, hidden from casual observation. "The anchor's in better shape than I expected," Jiwoo said as they surveyed the ancient device. "Most of the damage is to the power systems. I can fix that." They worked for hours in the heat and ash of the volcano. The architect technology was incredibly complex, but Jiwoo had studied it well. Slowly, the anchor began to come back to life. "Working," he said with satisfaction. "Once I activate this, any dimensional being within 100 light-years will be pulled into our reality." "How long will it take the Void Keeper to get here once we turn it on?" Deho asked. "Based on its current position, maybe for hours," Sol Young calculated. But it will bring everything it has. Every ship, every possessed person, every creature it has collected. Then we better be ready, Deho said. Timon, I want you to take the ship and get as far away as possible once we activate the anchor. I'm not leaving you here alone, Timon protested. Yes, you are. That's an order. Someone needs to survive to tell people what happened here. Sol Young stepped forward. I'm staying too. You'll need someone who understands the architect technology. I'm staying to watch your back. Nari added. You'll need cover while you work. This is not a debate, Deho said firmly. Tamin, you and Jiwoo will leave as soon as the anchor is active. So Young and Nari, you'll stay just long enough to help me get to the cave system, where the final battle will take place. What cave system? Tamin asked. Jiwoo checked his scanner. There's a network of lava tubes about 2 kilometers from here. They lead deep into the planet. The captain can get the Void Keeper to follow him down there. The battle will be contained, and if something goes wrong, Sol Young asked. Then you get out of there fast, Deho replied. Don't try to save me. Just make sure someone remembers that we tried. They finished preparing the anchor as the sun began to set. The volcanic world looked even more hellish in the orange light, but it would serve their purpose. Everyone ready? Deho asked. His team nodded. They were scared, but they were ready to do their duty. Activate the anchor, Deho ordered. Gu pressed a series of controls. The ancient device hummed to life, sending invisible waves through space. Somewhere in the galaxy, the Void Keeper would feel the pull. It's done, Giwu said. The anchor is active. Almost immediately, alarms began sounding on their ship. Captain Minho called over the comm. I'm reading massive energy signatures approaching from multiple directions. Something big is coming. Through the ash-filled sky, they could see the first signs of the Void Keeper's arrival. Dark shapes moving between the stars, growing larger by the minute. Tamin, take Jiwoo and go, Deho ordered. Now, Tamin grabbed Deho's hand. Captain, it's been an honor serving with you. The honor was mine, Deho replied. Take care of the others. Tamin and Jiwoo ran toward their ship. Within minutes, the thunder was lifting off, heading for the edge of the system. They're away, Soyeon confirmed, watching the ship disappear. Into the distance. Good, Deho said. Now we wait. The wait was not long. The sky above Pyra's 9 suddenly filled with ships. Thousands of them, all different sizes and shapes. Some looked human, others were clearly alien. They all had one thing in common. They were covered in the same darkness that marked the Void Keeper's influence. It's here, Nari said, checking her weapons. The ships began landing all around. The volcano. Figures emerged from them, walking in perfect formation toward the anchor point. They looked like people from a dozen different species, but their eyes were empty black holes. Captain Lee Deho, the possessed beings said in unison. Their voices combined into the deep ancient sound of the Void Keeper itself. You have done well. You have prepared the way for my final victory. How do you figure that? Deho called back. The anchor you have activated will indeed force me into physical form. But it will also prevent me from leaving this reality. I possess your body. I will be permanently bound to this dimension. I will be able to consume all life without having to return to my prison. Deho felt his heart sink. They had walked right into the trap. You see, the Void Keeper continued, I needed you to activate the anchor. I needed you to prepare the way for my permanent arrival. And I needed you to do it willingly, believing you were saving your species. You're lying, Soyoung said. The architects would not have built a device that helped you. The architects were fools, the Void Keeper replied. They built their anchor to trap me, yes, but they never understood that I wanted to be trapped. I wanted to be free of my prison, even if it meant being bound to this reality. Possessed. Beings began walking closer. There were hundreds of them now, all moving in perfect synchronization. Run, Deho told Soyoung and Nari. Get to the cave system. I'll hold them off. We're not leaving you, Nari said, raising her weapon. Yes. You are, Deho replied. That's an order. But before either of them could move, the ground began to shake. The volcano was coming to life. The dimensional anchor was pulling something massive into their reality. Above them, the sky split open like a wound. Through the gap, they could see the Void Keeper's true form. It was vast beyond imagination, a shadow that contained the death of 1,000 worlds. "It's time," the Void Keeper said, as it began to squeeze through the dimensional tear. Time for the chosen vessel to fulfill his purpose. Deho looked at his friends one last time. "Whatever happens next, remember that we tried to save everyone." Then he turned and ran toward the cave system, hoping to lead the Void Keeper away from his team. Behind him, the ancient evil began to take physical form, ready to claim the body. It had been hunting for centuries. The final battle was about to begin. Captain Lee Dae-ho ran through the volcanic landscape of Pyra's 9, his boots splashing through pools of molten rock. Behind him, the possessed beings followed in perfect formation, their empty eyes fixed on their target. Above, the sky burned as the Void Keeper forced its way into reality. "The cave entrance is just ahead," Dr. Park So-young called out over the cum. She and Sergeant Choi Nari were running beside him, refusing to abandon their captain despite his orders. "You two need to get out of here," Dae-ho said, as they reached the mouth of the cave system. "This is where it ends for me. Not without the Nexus Blade," Nari pointed out. "You left it on Titan 7, remember?" Dae-ho stopped at the cave entrance. She was right. In all the planning and running, he had forgotten the most important part. The weapon was still floating above its pool on the frozen world, 6 jumps away. "Then, we're going to have to face it without the blade," he said grimly. Captain So-young said, checking her tablet, "I've been studying the dimensional anchor's effects. The Void Keeper is now partially bound to this reality, but it's not completely physical yet. It still needs to possess you to become fully real." "Means we have time," Dae-ho realized. "It can't just kill me. It needs me alive and conscious for the possession to work." They entered the cave system. Tunnels were formed by ancient lava flows, creating a maze that stretched deep into the planet. The walls glowed with heat, and steam rose from cracks in the ground. "This way," Nari said, leading them deeper into the mountain. "If we can get far enough down, maybe we can collapse the tunnels behind us." They ran through tunnel after tunnel, always going deeper. Behind them, they could hear the sound of footsteps. Hundreds of possessed beings were following them into the caves. "They're not trying to catch us," So-young observed. "They're herding us toward something, the deepest chamber," Dae-ho said. "The Void Keeper wants to finish this where no one can interfere." After 20 minutes of running, they reached the heart of the cave system. It was a massive chamber filled with pools of lava. The heat was almost unbearable, but the chamber had something else. Ancient architect symbols covered the walls, glowing with the same blue light they had seen on other worlds. "This place is special," So-young said, studying the symbols. "The architects were here. This chamber was designed for something important. For a final battle," Dae-ho said, understanding. They knew someone would eventually have to face the Void Keeper here. The possessed beings began entering the chamber. They formed a circle around Dae-ho and his team, but they did not attack. They just stood there, waiting. The temperature in the chamber suddenly dropped. Ice began forming on the walls despite the heat from the lava. The air itself seemed to thicken, becoming hard to breathe. "It's coming," Nari said, raising her weapon. The shadows in the chamber began to move. They flowed together like water, growing darker and deeper. From the darkness, a shape began to emerge. The Void Keeper's physical form was terrible to look at. It was huge, with arms that looked like they could crush mountains. Its body was made of shadow and starlight, constantly shifting between solid and liquid. But its eyes were the worst part. They were like black holes, pulling at everything around them. When it spoke, its voice made the entire mountain shake. "You're finally mine, after centuries. I have searched so long for a vessel worthy of my power." Dae-ho stepped forward away from his friends. He looked up at the massive creature and grinned. "Fat chance." The Void Keeper laughed, a sound like, "Worlds dying, you still do not understand. You have no weapon, you have no power. You're alone in the depths of this world, with nowhere to run." "I'm not alone," Dae-ho said, "and I don't need a weapon to fight you." "Then you will die uselessly, and I will find another vessel." "No," Dae-ho said firmly, "because you made one mistake. You told me that you need me alive and conscious to possess me. which means I have something you want, and that gives me power. Void Keeper's eyes narrowed. What power could you possibly have? The power to choose, Deho replied. You can't take what I don't give you. He pulled out a small device from his belt. It was a neural disruptor designed to shut down brain function in emergency situations. If he activated it, he would die instantly, and the Void Keeper would lose its vessel. You would kill yourself rather than serve me, the Void Keeper asked. A heartbeat, Deho said. But I have a better idea. I'm going to make you a deal. I do not make deals with food. You will if you want what I have, Deho said calmly. Here's my offer. Fight me, one-on-one. No possessed slaves, no tricks, no dimensional powers. Just you and me. If you win, I'll submit willingly. If I win, you leave humanity alone forever. The Void Keeper considered this. And why would I agree to such terms? Because if you don't, I'll activate this device and you'll be stuck in this reality forever with no way to become fully physical. You'll be trapped here just like you were trapped in your prison. You underestimate me, human. I could simply possess one of your friends. Dr. Park doesn't have the genetic marker. Neither does Sergeant Choi. You need me specifically, remember? You said so yourself. The Void Keeper was silent for a long moment. Round the chamber, the possessed beings stood motionless, waiting for their master's decision. Very well, the creature finally said. I accept your terms. But know this, Chosen. Vessel, I have the strength of 1,000 worlds. I have consumed civilizations that spanned entire galaxies. What hope do you have against such power? I have something you've never understood, Deho said, putting away the neural disruptor. I have something worth fighting for. The battle began immediately. The Void Keeper struck with arms made of concentrated darkness, each blow strong enough to shatter stone. But Deho was ready. He rolled and dodged, using the chamber's layout to his advantage. The creature was powerful, but it was also clumsy. It had spent so long existing between dimensions that fighting in physical reality was awkward for it. Deho used this weakness, staying mobile and striking at the creature's joints and weak points. You cannot hurt me, the Void Keeper roared, as Deho's attacks seemed to have no effect. Maybe not, Deho admitted, dodging another massive fist. But I don't have to hurt you. I just have to outlast you. What do you mean the dimensional anchor is still active? It's pulling you into this reality, but it's also draining your power. The longer you stay here, the weaker you become. Void Keeper's eyes widened as it realized the truth. The anchor was indeed weakening it, forcing it to maintain a physical form that was unnatural for its kind. You knew, it said with growing rage. You planned this. I had some help, Deho said, glancing at Saw Young. My friend here figured out how the anchor really works. It doesn't just trap dimensional beings. It slowly converts them into normal matter, which means you're becoming more human and less godlike every second. So Young added from the side of the chamber. The Void Keeper roared and attacked with renewed fury, but its movements were already slower. Its form was becoming more solid, more limited. This is impossible, it said. I am eternal. I am beyond death. Nothing is beyond death, Deho said, continuing to dodge and weave, not even you. As the battle continued for what felt like hours. Slowly, the Void Keeper grew weaker. While Deho stayed strong, his human endurance, his willingness to keep fighting no matter what, began to tip the balance. I do not understand, the creature gasped, falling to one knee. How can you continue to fight? I've shown you the deaths of worlds, the futility of resistance. Why do you not despair? Because that's what makes us human, Deho said, breathing hard, but still standing. We don't fight because we think we'll win. We fight because it's the right thing to do. Your species is weak. You live such short lives. You're nothing compared to the cosmic forces of the universe. You're right, Deho agreed. You're weak. We do live short lives. But we also love each other. We sacrifice for each other. We never give up on each other. That makes us stronger than anything else in the universe. The Void Keeper tried to stand but could not. Its form was almost entirely solid now, trapped in the physical reality it had wanted so desperately to enter. I was a guardian once, it said quietly. I protected life across the galaxy. But I became corrupted, obsessed with controlling what I was meant to protect. It's not too late, Deho said, offering his hand. You could choose to be a guardian again. The Void Keeper looked at the offered hand. For a moment, something like hope flickered in its black eyes, but then it smiled. And Deho realized he had made a terrible mistake. The Void Keeper's smile was the most terrifying thing Captain Lee Deho had ever seen. Even weakened and trapped in physical form, the ancient entity had one last trick to play. You think you have one, the creature said, its voice now more human but still filled with malice. But I do not need to possess you anymore. The dimensional anchor has given me something better. What are you talking about? Deho asked, backing away from the fallen creature. I am now permanently part of this reality. I can touch minds directly, without needing a special vessel. Watch. The Void Keeper raised one clawed hand toward Dr. Park So-young. She screamed and grabbed her head as dark energy flowed from the creature into her mind. So-young. Sergeant Choi Nari shouted, raising her weapon and firing at the Void Keeper. The energy blasts hit the creature, but barely slowed it down. Your weapons cannot stop me now, the Void Keeper said, and soon your friend will be the first of my new servants in this reality. So-young's eyes began to turn black. She was fighting the possession, but Deho could see she was losing the battle. Let her go, Deho demanded. Your fight is with me. My fight is with all of humanity, the creature replied. You have shown me something interesting. Your species' willingness to sacrifice for each other. We'll use that weakness against you. It's not a weakness, Deho said, moving closer to his friend. It's our greatest strength. The Void Keeper laughed. Is it? Then prove it. Save her. Deho looked at So-young's struggling form. The darkness was spreading through her mind, but she was still fighting. Her scientific training, her years of studying ancient civilizations, her deep love for knowledge, were all resisting the creature's influence. So-young, Deho called out, remember who you are. Remember why you became a scientist. I wanted to learn, So-young gasped, her voice barely human. I wanted to understand the universe. The universe is not just darkness, Deho said. It's also light. It's also hope. It's also the connections between people who care about each other. For a moment, the darkness in So-young's eyes flickered. But the Void Keeper pushed harder, pouring more of its corrupted energy into her mind. You cannot save her, it said, just as you cannot save your species. I will take them one by one, and you will watch helplessly. That was when Deho understood. The creature was not just trying to possess So-young, it was trying to break his spirit to make him give up hope, because hope was the one thing it had never been able to understand or defeat. Nari, Deho said quietly. Do you trust me? With my life, Captain, she replied without hesitation. Then when I give the signal, I want you to shoot me. What? Nari stared at him in shock. Not to kill me? It's just enough to knock me unconscious. Can you do that? Nari understood immediately. The neural feedback. If you're unconscious when the Void Keeper tries to read your mind, it will be pulled into your subconscious instead of staying in control.
Exactly.
And in my subconscious, it will have to face everything that makes me human. The Void Keeper heard their conversation and released So-young, turning its full attention to Deho. Clever, but it will not work. I have seen the minds of 1,000 species. Your human consciousness is nothing special. Be not, Deho, said, but it's mine. He nodded to Nari. She adjusted her weapon's setting and fired. The energy blast hit Deho in the chest, sending him to the ground unconscious. The Void Keeper reached out with its mind, trying to possess the unconscious Captain. But as soon as it touched Deho's thoughts, something unexpected happened. Instead of finding a helpless mind to control, the Void Keeper found itself pulled into a world made of memories and emotions. It was inside Deho's consciousness, but this was not like any mind it had ever encountered. The creature found itself standing in the recreation room of a space station, watching a young Deho playing cards with his first crew. It felt their laughter, their friendship, their trust. In each other? This is meaningless, the Void Keeper said, trying to destroy the memory. But it would not disappear. The scene changed. Now it was watching Deho, holding the hand of a dying soldier, promising that her sacrifice would not be forgotten. The creature felt the weight of that promise, the way it shaped every decision Daeho made afterward. Sentiment, the Void Keeper snarled. Weakness. But the memories kept coming. Daeho's parents teaching him to never give up. His first command when he learned that being a leader meant putting others first. The day he met his team and realized that together they could face anything. Stop this, the creature demanded. But it could not escape. It was trapped in a maze of human experiences that it could not understand. The memories were not just Daeho's now. They were flowing in from outside, from So Young and Nari, who were somehow connected to their captain's mind. The creature saw So Young's love of discovery, her excitement at finding new knowledge. It felt Nari's fierce loyalty, her willingness to die for her friends. How is this possible? The Void Keeper asked. Because we're not alone, came Daeho's voice from everywhere and nowhere. We're never alone. More connections appeared. Memories from Lieutenant Kim Taemin, who was somewhere. Safe in space, but still thinking about his captain. Thoughts from Engineer Hanju Woo, who was working even now to find a way to help. Even Communications Officer Lee Minho, monitoring radio frequencies and hoping for good news. You wanted to understand humanity? Daeho's voice continued. This is what we are. Not individuals fighting alone, but part of something bigger. Every human who ever lived, who ever loved, who ever sacrificed for others. We carry them all with us. The Void Keeper tried to fight back, to push its own memories into the mix. Memories of worlds consumed, of civilizations destroyed, the cold emptiness between stars. But for every dark memory it shared, the humans shared 10 bright ones. Birthday parties and wedding celebrations, children taking their first steps, scientists making discoveries that would help everyone, soldiers protecting the innocent, teachers passing on knowledge, artists creating beauty, people helping strangers for no reason except that it was right. This is impossible, the creature gasped. There is so much suffering in the universe, so much pain and death and meaninglessness. You're right, Daeho agreed. There is, but there's also this. There's also love and hope and the choice to keep fighting even when everything seems lost. The memories intensified. The Void Keeper felt what it was like to be part of a family, part of a crew, part of a species that refused to surrender. Felt the weight of responsibility and the joy of connection, and slowly, something inside the ancient creature began to change. I remember it whispered. I remember what I was before I became corrupted. I was meant to protect, not to consume. Can choose to protect again? Daeho offered. It's not too late, but I have done so much damage. I have consumed so many lives. Then honor them by choosing to be better. The Void Keeper felt the truth of those words resonating through the connected minds around it. This was what the architects had never understood. The creature could not be destroyed because it was not truly evil. It was lost, corrupted by eons of isolation and forgotten purpose. What must I do? It asked. Help us, Daeho said simply. Use your power to protect instead of consume. Guard the galaxy against threats that normal people cannot fight. In the way. Physical world. Daeho's eyes opened. The Void Keeper was still connected to his mind, but its form was changing. The darkness was being replaced by something that looked almost like starlight. I accept, the creature said, its voice now filled with something that might have been hope. I will become the guardian I was meant to be. The transformation was not instant. It would take time for the Void Keeper to undo the damage it had caused, to release the minds it had consumed, to learn how to protect instead of destroy. But as Daeho stood up, supported by his friends, he knew that humanity had achieved something remarkable. They had not defeated an enemy through force, it redeemed one through compassion. Captain So Young said, her eyes clear and bright again. Look, above them, the possessed beings throughout the chamber were waking up. The darkness was leaving their eyes replaced by confusion and relief. Across the galaxy, the same thing was happening. Ships were coming back online. Colonies were reporting that their missing people had returned. It's over, Nari said with amazement. Daeho corrected, looking up at the creature that was no longer the Void Keeper but something new. It's just beginning. Months later, reports came in from across the galaxy. Ancient threats that had slumbered for millennia were being dealt with by a mysterious guardian. Pirates who preyed on merchant ships found their vessels disabled by an unknown force. Alien warlords planning invasions discovered their fleets scattered before they could attack. Dr. Park Soyoung published papers about her experiences, sharing the knowledge of the architects with the scientific community. Sergeant Choinari trained new recruits in the importance of never giving up on their teammates. Lieutenant Kim Taemin and engineer Han Ji-woo continued their service, knowing that their captain had taught them something valuable about what it meant to be human. And Captain Lee Dae-ho returned to his duties, leading his team on new missions across the stars. Sometimes, on quiet nights, when he looked out at the vast expanse of space, he thought he could see a figure moving between the stars. A guardian, keeping watch, protecting all life in the galaxy. The hunt is over, he said to himself, remembering the words he had once planned as his final message. Humanity endures. But more than that, humanity had shown that even the darkest corruption could be healed through understanding and compassion. They had proven that their greatest weapon was not technology or force, but their refusal to abandon hope and their willingness to believe that anyone could choose to be better. In the end, that was what made them human, and that was what would always make them strong.